I'm reading from the Message translation of the Bible, and here is the words of Jesus. Just before the Passover feast, Jesus knew that the time had come to leave this world and go to the Father. Having loved his dear companions, he continued to love them right to the end. It was supper time. The devil by now had Judas, son of Simon, the Iscariot, firmly in his grip, and all was ready for betrayal. Do what you must do, said Jesus. Do it and get it over with. Now, no one round the supper table knew why he said this to him. Some thought that since Judas was their treasurer, Jesus was telling him to buy what they needed for the feast, or that he should give something to the poor. Judas, with the piece of bread left, went out. It was night.
It was night. Yes, it was. Night physically, for a few, night spiritually, and for many, night emotionally. Judas, why did you do what you did? Did it seem that events were moving too slowly? Did you think you could force Jesus into action? Or had you just become disillusioned and disappointed? Certainly, your suicide shows that things did not work out as you had planned, had intended. It was night. For Judas, a spiritual darkness. For Peter, too. We do not know to where the disciples scattered when the soldiers came to Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. It has been suggested that they may have fled back to Bethany, where they were spending each night, and then the closed city gates prevented their return. But two of them, John and Peter, must have followed the soldiers back into the city and become separated. For there in the courtyard, Peter is challenged by the young servant who recognized his Galilean accent. Only Peter himself could have told the gospel authors of his denial that worst moment of his life. A spiritual, dark, dark night. He must have wondered if he could ever be forgiven. How he needed to hear the message given by Jesus to the women on Easter Day. Tell the disciples and Peter, we'll meet in Galilee. And for so many more, that dark evening was the beginning of an emotional night that was to last for 3 long days. For Mary, Jesus' mother, as she watched her son die in agony, she must surely have heard the words of the angel, "You will give birth to a son, and his kingdom will never end." How could she reconcile those words with the scene before her? Mary Magdalene. By the time the Gospels were written, her name might have been highly regarded by the church, and they were too kind to give all the details of what might have been a colourful background. But some things we can guess. That life had not been kind to her. Misused and hurt, she had found a new beginning to her life when she met Jesus, and a new family amongst his followers. But if Jesus were dead, if the extended family disintegrated, what would become of her? Back on her own again? It was a dark, emotional night. There was a third Mary. John's Gospel tells us that Mary, the wife of Cleopas, was at Calvary. My Bible notes tell us that the name is sometimes spelt Cleopas, which is so helpful, for Luke tells us that 2 people, Cleopas and his companion, were on their way to Emmaus on the evening of Easter Day. They had lived in their emotional nightmare. No wonder they could describe the events of Good Friday so clearly, for it could well be that one of them had actually been there. I cannot imagine that anyone has led a normal sort of life and never looked back to a time or event and thought, that was my worst nightmare. It may have been something that happened to you, or a loved one, or someone did something which led to your nightmare. This past year will have seen some people sail through the pandemic untouched, while others will have lost family or work or business, and life will never be quite the same again. It was night, a personal night of spiritual or emotional darkness, and it will have come to us at some point in our lives. But then everything changed. Easter morning, for Mary the mother, for Mary the outcast, and for Mary the wife, for Peter, so disappointed with himself, Easter morning dawned. Oh, Judas, was the heartache that you felt when you realized what you had done just too much for you to bear? How our hearts go out to those whose situation cannot be borne one moment longer. How we feel for them in their despair. But for us who share these moments together, we have the life-changing joy of knowing that there is to be an Easter morning. As the songwriter put it, in my soul an Easter morning. I am Christ's and Christ is mine. Let's listen to the Pasadena songsters. Dear Lord, the song said that you give us strength to trust through times we may not understand. We have all had them, Lord, those times we may not understand. When the disciples met on that Thursday evening, they thought they were to simply share a supper. They had no idea that one day men would call it their last supper. No idea of the nightmare that would soon begin. So how can we ever thank you for the gift beyond understanding that Easter Day would dawn for the disciples and for us? Amen.